Hello to all our followers and welcome to this new episode of 5 Minutes. Today we talk about better bowling together than alone, social capital and sport organizations with our guest, Dr. Richard Tacon, a senior lecturer at the Department of Management of Birkbeck University of London. Richard, very welcome to 5 Minutes. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Richard, this interview takes inspiration from your recent book titled Social Capital and Sport Organization. Now, my first question is, what is social capital and how can we combine it with sports?
Essentially, social capital is about the value of being connected to others. I think beyond that, you get very quickly into a lot of debate because people have used the concept in different ways. But I would argue, along with other people, that the most coherent way to think about it is as resources accessible through being part of social networks or other social structures. And when it comes to sport, then a lot of people, particularly politicians and policymakers, have kind of held sport up as a natural producer of social capital. You know, people come together through sport, they often play in teams, they play in clubs. You can kind of see why that's argued, but it's actually a lot more complicated than that. Sport is also quite tribal, it can be quite exclusive in a lot of ways. And so there's a big question about whether any social capital developed in and through sport stays very much within those kind of groups, clubs, networks, or whether it somehow spills out into wider society.
So social capital is a lot about social ties. So how do people form social ties in a sport club?
To be honest, there's nothing kind of magical or particularly surprising about it. It's just like in other contexts in lots of ways. People come together, they do some kind of shared activity, sport in this case, and they develop relationships. I mean, in practice, what I observed through my research and through talking to people is that it's often the kind of interaction in and around the activities that's really important. So in sport, you know, the drink afterwards, the social aspects, and that's where you kind of form, deepen, maintain your relationships.
So what are the outcomes of your investigation then?
Well, so I looked really closely at the kind of social ties. And I think what's interesting is, you know, some people form close friendships through sports clubs. Everybody forms the kind of nodding acquaintanceships, but a lot of people formed these kind of club friends. So good friendships, but in the context of the club, and people really valued these, often precisely because they stayed within that kind of club context. And then the research got into the kind of social mechanisms, the kind of micro processes through which those relationships kind of become social capital. So how and why people become willing to kind of share resources with others. And here you can see kind of individual forms of exchange, you know, kind of almost trading favors, and then more kind of group-like processes where people feel part of the same group, a kind of sense of fellow feeling, and that's what motivates them to kind of make resources available to others.
So, last question, what can we learn from these outcomes?
Well, look, for academics, I'd say the main thing is about understanding that social capital is a process or a set of processes, and it's context dependent. So a lot of research traditionally and still tries to measure social capital and kind of connect it with other outcome variables, you know, better health, better education, lower crime. But social capital is highly context dependent, so it kind of functions in and through particular contexts. So any research needs to kind of take account of that and understand it and kind of capture that. I think also there's a load of lessons here for kind of politicians and policymakers. There's a whole chapter in the book devoted to that. And here I think policymakers can kind of do a lot and not much at the same time. So they can't really get in there and kind of artificially create social capital. It doesn't really work like that. It builds up. over time in particular groups. But they can for sure kind of nurture and support it. So where things seem to be kind of working well, then provide support in the form of, stable, affordable facilities for clubs and other groups to kind of continue their activities. And then the social capital kind of emerges as a kind of byproduct of what they're doing anyway.
Richard, thank you so much for this inspiring discussion. We wish you all the best, and we hope to see you here again at 5 Minutes.
Pleasure. Thank you.